My wife turned to me this morning and said, "What is going down in the world?" I said, "Nothing. Bitcoin is moving up." Sorry for the bad joke, guys. Let's roll the intro and get right down into it. Okay, guys, here we have a Bitcoin paired up with USDT. We're on the 1 hour chart and Binance is the data source here. Now, as you can see, we had the break to the upside, very much as we were kind of expecting. We could see that we tapped down a little bit lower. We noticed this was going to have to happen yesterday when we tapped into this lower range down here at the 40,523 to 40,937. We moved on out. The structure of this was essentially going to always mean that we had to come down towards our double bottom that we highlighted down here at 40,555. We tapped that and we launched like a rocket. Okay, moving out and breaking through our 50 SMA, that's the yellow line, the 50 EMA, that's the red line, and the 200 EMA here as well. Okay, that's the white line. You can also see that we found brief rejection just here on the trend line. So the trend line here, we had 4 touch points, brief rejection, breakthrough. Okay, and so we saw this breakout here occur not only past the 50 SMA, the 50 EMA, the 200 EMA, but also the downward trend line. Okay, we then broke up previously or higher than the previous swing high, also found brief resistance there. Okay, so double top was very brief for about an hour, and then we broke through that as well. That was $42,724, and then obviously breaking up, we tapped above the swing high at 43,475. Okay, so again, double top territory here and rejection that we're seeing at the moment. I don't think we're done necessarily pushing up just yet, but I do see this as a very choppy correction that is to occur. Revisiting the consolidation range that we were at previously, I'm going to just take this area right here so show you guys this yellow box between 42,437 and 42,757. I'm expecting price to kind of retrace back into this range here before moving back up again. With the breach above the 43,475, we actually went to a high of 43,497. It does mean that we are in fact in that bullish corrective structure that I was talking about, and we are looking to move up slightly higher. I still do not think that we're going to push higher than 44,700. We are likely to hopefully keep this area under control, but if it does, then obviously we'll be looking at some of those slightly higher ranges. But for now, I'm not expecting it to. I don't think there's a rationale and a reasoning to think that we are likely to push above 44,700. Ultimately, this break to the upside is very much as we were kind of expecting. Ultimately, the higher range that I'm thinking we're likely to find major kind of resistance on is this little one over here, the previous area of consolidation becoming our kind of area of resistance. And so realistically speaking, we're talking about price moving up towards 43,584 to 44,136 in my opinion. So the moves to the upside here are interesting. I don't think they kind of have a criteria here to say that they are impulsive. I think they are corrective, meaning that they are going to be short-lived in this particular direction. Ultimately, it's a bit of a V bottom, which is an interesting move to kind of say that there's a lot of momentum building up behind here. But we were at that point in time down at this low point oversold on the 8-hour and 4-hour charts, which we are no longer. We are in fact now overbought, and from here we can see a bit of a correction to the downside. So on the hourly chart, I think it was very, very interesting. Throw some smart money concepts into the mix here. I tick the right button, there we go. You can see that we had the break of structure to confirm our bearish state of play. This automatic rally that we see here hasn't changed our characterizations. If we were to get a closed position above 43,475, I imagine we are likely to change from the bearish pattern to a bullish pattern. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. But for now, that isn't something that we need to worry about because it hasn't happened yet. Any closures above 43,475 is likely to create indicate a change of characterization into a bullish state of play. And if you were smart enough to zoom on out, you would notice that this will basically just be a big sideways ranging market. And from here, we'll be looking for bigger moves to the upside, eventually with bigger breaks to the upside. Any continuation pattern will continue whatever led into it. And in this case, we had the rallies to the upside, continuation going sideways. We should break out to the upside if it is to be a continuation pattern. And one of the telltale signs for that will be an inconsistency in how smart money concepts is going to mark up the structure. It's either bearish or it's going to be bullish. And if you start seeing a lot of switches between bearish structures and bullish structures through a smart money concepts, then we are likely to see this as a continuation pattern. Ultimately, though, looking at it, we've still got some interesting things going on in here. We have now, of course, on a slightly larger scale, zoomed out, a new local high. So that's interesting. I still think we've still got a little bit more of a push to the upside up into this premium range that you see on smart money concepts. So yeah, all looking pretty good on the 1 hour time frame for BTC. Some fair value gaps still down here. Equilibrium obviously back down here as well. So I do expect retracements to occur. But I also think before we see any major corrections, we're still going to push up a little bit higher. 43.5 to 44 is where I would be aiming personally. Let's take this up into the daily. Actually, before we do that, let's actually just check one other thing on the divergences. Nothing showing up on the divergence indicator. That's cool. Let's go up into the daily. So the daily, obviously, I was talking about the other day, we were likely to retap into this range after we got rejected. 42,400 to 44,146. We're right inside the sweet spot again. So again, resistances are true here. We're finding a lot of resistance here. So we are going to get rejected, in my opinion, from this range. I'm not expecting that breakout above 44,700. But, it's still a possibility nonetheless. I just don't think it's going to happen. I suspect more of a move down towards the 50 EMA and the 50 SMA, the yellow lines that you see on the chart here. These are coming in at 38,759 on the red EMA and 38,699 on the yellow SMA. Okay, these are the 50 SMA, 50 EMA lines. I suspect that we're likely to move on down towards those and find support. Now, that may be that actually, those EMAs lift up, and by the time price retraces, it's more going to be around the $39,600 to $40,000 level that you're going to find those support levels. It'll be interesting to see how price does react over time. Throwing the stochastic here on the screen, as you can kind of see, we are still oversold. We can be down here for a while. It's not overly too problematic, but at some point I suspect we are likely to see a lift to the upside. I think that's likely to occur once we actually find good support level, a little bit deeper in price, probably towards that $39,600 and $40,000, and then from there we can kind of think more about the beginning of next year and what that might mean. Still no major divergences on the daily time frame here. The last one that we saw was the hidden bullish divergence when we had the low at around 40,222, and we saw pretty significant growth. We haven't got any divergences at the moment on the indicator there. Volume profiles obviously are still very, very low, but it did spike up yesterday just a fraction, but ultimately it's still lower than it was previously. So again, it's not giving me a lot of confidence to think that there's a huge amount of demand coming in here for BTC. Ultimately, I think it's just a case of grabbing the liquidity out of the market. Shoot up into the weekly time frame. You can see that not a lot has really changed on the weekly. We obviously tapped into the higher ranges here on the parallel channel. We are looking for retracements through all of the zones that I previously spoke about, with the first area of interest really being $36,000 to $37,000. That's going to be the previous area of support. Hopefully that will turn back into support here for Bitcoin, just around that midline of the parallel channel. Ultimately, the price action is above the 50 EMA, the 50 SMA, the 200 EMA. They are all sat very low, 30,000 or lower. So the red line is the 50 EMA. That's 30,700 right now, with the yellow SMA being 29,058, and then of course the 200 EMA at 26,922. So there's a lot of space between the price right now and those EMAs and SMAs, chances are that we will be tapping into those support levels of those exponential moving averages in time. We are heavily overbought, not only on the kind of small 4 hours and 8 hours, but also here on the weekly and monthly timeframes. So again, we are looking for major corrections to the downside on these timeframes, in my opinion. So again, we're just at the beginning of a reversal. I see that's how I see the market right now. Bit of a market maker pattern. If I was to kind of predict out what's going to happen here based on market makers' behaviors, I would expect, retracements to kind of occur somewhat like this as they kind of mimic the moves to the upside that we saw. Okay, market maker patterns are very much like this in the way that they kind of react. So you have the same price, you have these kind of price movements to the upside, up, consolidate, up, consolidate, up, consolidate, up, consolidate, and then it goes down, consolidate, down, consolidate, down, consolidate, down, right? And so all of these key areas that we find ourselves with in terms of Bitcoin that I've highlighted here are areas that I think price will likely go down to, consolidate on or bounce from before moving down again at a slightly later stage. This to me looks very much like a market maker pattern. Not only do we have lack of volume, and bearing in mind this is now Bitstamp data, if I throw in the volume profiles on Bitstamp data, you can see how the volumes are much lower than they were in the previous bullish market. That means that there isn't a lot of interest in Bitcoin right now. Even though price has moved up the way that it has done, it doesn't show you that there's an appetite for demand to come on in here. And ultimately, price to move up like this can only happen when there's an imbalance between the supply and the demand. And if price is going up, that means there's an imbalance in the supply side or the demand side. Now, we know that the volumes are low. That means it's not the demand. It has to be the supply. And if we want to see a shrinkage of the supply, how else do you do that other than remove the Bitcoin from the exchanges? You take a look at the on-chain data, whether you are a fan of Glassnode or the CC data over at membership.gkcrypto.io, and you can see close to 750,000 Bitcoin has left the exchanges this year. And that is enough, in my opinion, considering the lack of demand here, to actually create these spikes to the upside. Helped, of course, by the DXY as well and the dollar index and what is going on with the Federal Reserve, etc. Ultimately, I think we've had a bit of a recipe here for a bit of a fake pump to the upside that isn't really driven from a huge demand for BTC, but instead a scenario that's unfolded here through market makers withdrawing BTC from exchanges, and then of course having things like the DXY and the Federal Reserve help push the price of assets to the upside. All in all, we've benefited massively from it. But I do expect that the Bitcoin that was removed from the exchanges to come back on, and because there isn't a huge amount of demand, there's a lack of demand, price will come down in the same way that it went up in this kind of consolidating market maker pattern. Ultimately, let me know what you think about that in the comments below, but I think that is going to wrap up today's video. If you have found it useful and informative, smash that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. Until the next one though, guys, have a fantastic day.